So hey guys, it's Zion again, and here's some Conquest Large from the Battlefield 4 beta. I was playing this game last night, and I wasn't going to use this gameplay, but then it turned out to be pretty good. But I wanted to talk about, I want to expand on my opinions from my last video, because I didn't have a lot of time to actually get them out, and I sort of rambled a little bit. And I wanted to respond to Urtsy, and I wanted to respond to Dell, and say that I do think there are certain things about this game that make it very different from Battlefield 3. I think there's a definite lack of severe recoil, at least at close range, and especially with the carbines, or carbines, however you want to pronounce it. But the AK-5C and the ACR, it's ACW or whatever, they are very low recoil, very high power, very accurate weapons, and I think that they reload too quickly, have too little recoil, and are generally a little too powerful for all-kit weapons. I don't think at this point that it was a wise decision to make the carbines all kit. I think the PWs should have stayed all kit. That's my opinion on things, because now the recon kit, while still useful, especially with the addition of motion balls and the motion detector, which I will get into a little bit further, I think that could use some tweaks as well. There are certainly some things about this game that that feel a little more Call of Duty like. Dell, I know that you said that it feels like that in Battlefield 3 you could turn on someone, and it's not so easy to do in this game. And I think that has to do with a couple things. One, I think the up close bullet damage is a lot more. I think that the weapons have, I think that the basic is between 25 and 30 up close, especially for the high power weapons like the AK-12. I think when we get higher fire rate assault rifles, we will get certainly a higher damage threshold. But what I really like about this game is the fact that the damage drops off a lot quicker, and that's what I was talking about with the skill-based, is that you might get 30 damage up close. It might be a 4-shot kill, disregarding a headshot when it's not up close, but it takes a lot more skill to get someone from a middle distance. Because you have to control your fire, you have to be able to control your recoil. You can't just go and full auto from across the map. There has to be tapping. It's not terribly recoily like, say, Red Orchestra 2 is, and I think that there's going to be some tweaks to the weapon balance, and I think there probably already have been some tweaks to the weapon balance, because this is an older build of the game, so we're going to be seeing some changes. That being said, I find that I have been able to turn on people if their shot is bad, especially up close. I've been able to sort of aimbot a squad spawn. For example, I was playing this match or another domination match, and I said to myself, I said to Skulls, I said, I just aimbotted these guys. I want them to be mad about that. Because I killed the first guy right as his teammate was spawning on him. Spawn protection wears off, he gets a few shots on me, but I take out the squad mate as well. And I never felt like I could do that in Battlefield 3. I always felt like if the squad mate spawned in, I didn't have time to react. He was already shooting me before I could even get a bullet registration. Now, of course, there are the invincibility frames to bear in mind. But I feel like, and this is my opinion, you, Urtsy, Dell, you are certainly welcome to disagree, because I think that's what makes these games good, is when disagreements happen. But I feel like that on the whole, the gunplay takes more skill. It's not a 5-shot burst with the M16 to some astronomical distance. It's not a 5-shot burst with the M416 to some astronomical distance. Instead, it's several 6 or 7 bursts of 3 or 4 bullets from a middle to long distance that actually gets the kill. And before I make this a rebuttal video to you, Urtsy and Dell, I want to talk about something else that I really like that they changed or added to. Is that in Battlefield 3, there was a naval combat element. There was certainly tons of water to go through. But the thing of it is, there wasn't really a use for the water. It was getting between place to place. Whereas here in Battlefield 4, at least in the beta, there is a use, even though the water is fairly localized. There is a use for the water. The boat, for example, is very powerful, easy to take out with the laser designator, but if it's not taken out, it becomes a real force to be reckoned with. And I know that we're going to be seeing a whole lot of different kinds of naval warfare, and I'm really glad that they're adding that element to the battlefield, because Battlefield 3, being infantry and land and air vehicle based, it was lacking a little bit. Something like that got stale when, if you'd maxed out the helicopters and you'd maxed out the jets, you were essentially done with the air vehicles, and if you maxed out the tanks, you were essentially done with the tanks and the land vehicles. And they tried to sort of Change that with the armored kill map, certainly with the addition of the tank killers. But again, no one really liked that map pack, and so that sort of fell flat. And speaking of falling flat, I want to address the tower, the skyscraper, a little bit before I end this video. I think that when it's up, it's too much of a distraction. I think the first thing any player should do who has the ability, be he a recon with C4, a support with C4, or an engineer with rockets, or an assault with an M320, take down the tower. Because when it's up, it's just, people are just trying to get up there and camp up there, so that their teammates can parachute down, and it becomes a hindrance. Now, I will say that I enjoy watching the tower come down, but once you've seen it come down once, you've seen it come down 1,000 times, unless of course you can change graphics settings mid-game, at which point, yeah, you're gonna see it's a little bit prettier. But I find that even though the dust tends to hit my performance really hard, when you make C a ground level point, when you take away the aerial advantage, it does two things. First of all, it makes the game more linear, but it puts an emphasis on controlling the point, not camping it. Because there's a very distinct difference. When you're controlling C, it becomes a waypoint. You stop there to make sure it's capped. You don't stay there to make sure it's capped. Camping the point, just A, B, D, and E, they belong to the enemy team, but you're up on C and you were just parachuting down and getting shot out of the air. So when possible, always, always, always get a couple teammates together and say, hey, let's take down the tower. Yes, your FPS will take a small hit because the entire server is filled with dust particles, and dust particles can get a little janky to render for the entirety of the map. But you're going to make C something not to concentrate on, but more to pass through to get to B and A or D and E. It becomes, like I said, a waypoint. It doesn't become a focus in and of itself. And the last thing I want to touch on in this game is the fact that Battlefield 4 feels to me, and this is what we all expected, of course, but it feels to me like they put out Battlefield 3 as the beta for Battlefield 4. DICE needed 4 years to develop this game. They needed a full 4-year development cycle, but they didn't have it. EA wouldn't let them have it. Call of Duty wouldn't let them have it. So they hammered together BF3 in 18 months and trimmed out all the fat they could. Made it as gun-on-gun, as infantry-based as possible, while still keeping a Battlefield feel. And then they took the additional 2 years, took the base of Battlefield 4, or Battlefield 3 rather, and they said, alright, how can we perfect it? And then Battlefield 4, as we see it, is the game that resulted. And this is because of a few things, because this game feels like a hybrid between Bad Company 2, as far as the bullet damage drop-off is concerned, and the vehicle play, and the destruction, and Medal of Honor with the high damage and insta-kills, but that'll be ironed out. And then Battlefield 3 with the sound engine, the higher graphics, and the overall polished gameplay. In essence then, Battlefield 4 is the game that DICE wanted to make, but couldn't for business reasons. They wanted to put out a grand scale, huge destruction, huge player counts, they wanted to raise the bar on everything, but weren't able to for corporate, business, money, time, a whole bunch of reasons. And so now that we have it in demo form, and it's an old demo, this is old code, which is probably part of the reason, and just like the Battlefield 3 beta was, we're going to be getting a much more polished product, I hope. Because the Battlefield betas, at least the last two I've been a part of, Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, they have felt and they feel very similar. A lot of the things we complained about with the Battlefield 3 beta we're complaining about now. A lot of things we complained about with BC2 and Battlefield 3, again, we're complaining about now. And I think we have to come to terms with the fact that these are not games that we can look at in isolation, but nor can we look at them in the total context. We have to look at them in a mix between the two, because Battlefield 4 is a mix between all the things that have worked in the past and what's working into the future.